Here we go. Okay, that's the answer. Okay, hope everybody's doing well. Hope we also go out to whoever it goes out to. Terrific. I just have to check one thing. Sorry. Okay, fine. So there's a lot of interesting things on the Parsha. Obviously, Mishpatim is a packed Parsha. I want to share a few different things that I saw. The first halacha that I saw is the very interesting halacha of an Eved Ivri, a non-Jewish slave. Now, in general, we're never called Ivri in the Torah, right? Avraham Avinu is called Ivri Anochi, but we're not called Ivri in the Torah. Jewish people are called Bnei Yisrael, called Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael. How did it become an Eved Ivri? Why is it not an Eved Yisrael? So the Shem Shmuel reflects on a very interesting idea. And he first quotes his father, Davnei Nezer, that says that the concept of Aver, why are we called Ivrim? Why are called Ivrim? It's because we're on the Aver Anar, we're on the other side of the river. Right? And Avram was known as the Ivri because he was on the other side of the river. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
So we just kind of started this. It's always nice to have somebody to talk to besides myself. So at the beginning of Mishpatim talks about an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, and Avram is called an Ivri. The question is, we don't see anywhere in the Torah that the Jewish people are called Ivrim. Like, we're always called Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael. So why aren't we called an Eved Yisrael? Why isn't it an Eved Ivri? So the Shem Shmuel brings him his father, the Avnei Nezer, that Ivri connotes being on the Evanar, meaning on the other side of the river, which means on the simple level, and we'll explain how it is in context here, on the simple level, Avram had a different way of looking at the world than everybody else. So he was like on the other side, he was like doing something different than everybody else. And that concept of doing something different than everybody else is called Ivri. So why does that have to do with our slave? He said, because in essence, we are not slaves. Anybody in theory can be a slave, and he even could be that it makes sense that he could find himself to be a slave. And it could be even in essence, his understanding of the world is that he is in the hands of somebody else. But in essence, as of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're no longer slaves. In essence, we're on the other side. So we have a world which is relating to the world in a limited way, and in many ways they're not free of that. So in essence, we're free of that. So this Eved is really, in essence, an Ivri. He's really on the other side. Now, what happens is, that's the first step. So the Avnei Nezer says some remarkable things. He says that in what way are we on the other side? What's unique in terms of this quality? So he said what's unique about this quality, that in essence, we live within us as free people. In essence, we know that we're special in Hashem's world. Hopefully everybody should feel they're special in Hashem's world, but there's something unique about knowing that whatever will happen to us as a people, we're a free people. But what can happen is we can lose a picture of who we are, and we can get involved, and we live in a very external world, and we can relate to ourselves in external ways. We can think, for example, that we are not just a Tzelem Elokim, we're an image of Hashem, but we could think, I'm a dentist, I'm I'm a computer programmer. I do cash advance. That's who I am. But not necessarily, or definitely not necessarily that is that who we are. But we lose that context. So we become an Eved Ivri. So we're an Ivri. We're really kind of from a different world. But we become an Eved in this world, and we lose that perspective. And he says, and that internal, just being like an internal, more private kind of people, has some fascinating relevance. He says an amazing idea, which I've heard different ideas and I've thought different ideas. Moshe is in Mitzrayim in the early days, and he sees two Jews quarreling. And he tells them, why are you quarreling? What's going on? And there was an Egyptian over there. I'm sorry, there was an Egyptian hitting I took this story out of context. So initially, Moshe sees an Egyptian hitting a Jewish man, and he kills the Egyptian because there's such an injustice being done. The next day, he sees two people arguing and fighting, and one of them, and he says, "What are you doing?" So he says, "Oh, you're going to kill us like the way you killed this Egyptian?" And he said, "Oh, now I know everything is known. Now I know that the word is out." So the simple explanation is because now that the word is out, my life is in danger. Rashi says something which is rather remarkable. And he says, now I never understood why the Jews are being subjugated. And now I understand because they're speaking Lashon Hara. It always bothered me. Why is that an answer? Like, how does that work that we become subjugated because we're speaking Lashon Hara? Chas v'shalom. Again, it's an easy proof to say, well, we see how bad Lashon Hara is. But the Shem Yishmuel brings from the Maharal that we are in essence an internal people. We keep things private, we're tzenuim, we're modest. And once things become like just out there, we just talk about things, we just kind of share everything, we lose that certain privacy, we lose that certain sneers inside of us. So that's when we lose our essence, that's when we go to Golus, because Golus is always when you leave, when you're not in touch with your essence. So we lose our essence when we're not panimic, when we're not internal, we're not really being who we are in down deep, and we become either tattletales or we become slaves. We somehow get sucked into the world around us and we lose our context, our bearings. So he says that he says something fascinating. How are you going to like this kasha? We've been learning enough together that I know. He asks a wonderful question. How does this fellow become a slave? So the halacha is, a person can sell himself into slavery if he's hurting badly enough financially. But the normal way when we talk about an Eved Ivri is a fellow who stole and doesn't have, for whatever money the money then was used, and he doesn't have money to get paid back. So he's sold as a slave. Now, what kind of thievery did he do? So he was a ganav, right? So what happens if he's not a ganav? What happens if he's a gazlan? What's the difference between a ganav and a gazlan? A ganav is somebody who does it in private, doesn't want to get caught. And a gazlan is like right out there. He doesn't care. So if a person is a Jew and he's a ganav, he steals from somebody's house, and then he doesn't have money to pay back, he gets sold as a slave. But if someone's a gazlan, there's a Jewish guy who's like snatching people's pocketbooks, chas v'shalom, and he gets caught, and he doesn't have money, he doesn't get sold. That's the halacha. A ganav gets sold, and a thief who does things inside gets sold. A person who does things, the gazlan, doesn't get sold. So he says, the idea is based on what we just said before, that being a ganav is using the quality of privacy in a totally misdirected way. Because we're supposed to be panimim. We're supposed to be tznius. So what did he do? He used the tznius to become a ganav, to become a thief. He doesn't want anybody to know. So that quality of privacy, of keeping things internal, is now being used in a corrupt way. So whenever we corrupt a quality that we have and we're supposed to use, that's when the Torah says, no, something has to be fixed up. If that's not who we are in essence, the Gazlan, Jews are not, the Gemara says in general that Jews, even if they are thieves, are not Gazlanim. We don't steal just in the open like that. We do it around the back. We're not straight out thieves. White collar, blue collar. We're the white collar thieves. We do it, but that's sneers. We don't want to get, because there's a certain privacy. We know a certain busha, a certain sense of healthy sense, even of shame, that we know that things are not okay to be done. And we have a certain internal truth about that. So if that's misused, somebody gets sold into slavery. What happened to this fellow? So in essence, he's free, but he lost himself in a world. He lost his internal bearings. Since he lost his internal bearings, he wanted to become a slave. How much did he lose his internal bearings, and how much did he still remain, in essence, free? So that's the two halachas of when he goes free. He goes free either on the 7th year on Shemitah, or he goes free on Yovel. What's the difference? The difference is, as is known, if a person in the 7th year says, I don't want to go, I love my wife and my children. How do you have a wife and children? Again, it could be that he was brought in with his wife and children. But the Torah mandates that if the owner wants, he can give him a non-Jewish woman, and they have children. And those children, those offspring now go to the master. If he says, I don't want to go, I love my wife and my children. Now, it always bothered me, this phrase, what do you mean I love my wife and my children? It's not your wife. She's not Jewish. What do you mean you love your wife? Right? What does the Torah mean? I love my wife. It means he lost his bearings. He lost his bearings in an outside world, in a non-Jewish world, and he thinks that's his wife. He thinks that's the wife. So he lost himself. So once he loses his bearings, he's in trouble. And because of that, he doesn't go free. Right? And that's why the Torah says he put in Piras ear, because what he heard it, I am Shem, your God. Don't be a slave to anybody else. They didn't hear that. Right? He got lost in an external world, so he thinks, this is my wife, these are my children. It's like, no, these are not your wife. This is not your wife, this is not your children. But at the end of the Yovel, by the 50th year, he's going to go out free. Why? Because in essence, he's a free person. In essence, a Jew never loses that. Even if he gets mixed in with all of the craziness, right? He still is, that's not who he is in essence. So, in short, this Eved Ivri should have been called the Eved Israel, but he's an Eved Ivri because Ivri means he's on the other side. Really, in essence, he's free, but he lost himself. He lost his bearings. He becomes an Eved. The concept of Moshe, seeing people fighting, means they've lost that internal sense of privacy, not just spreading all the gossip all over the place. When we have a slave, a Jewish slave who's a Ghana, right? You misuse that privacy and is now stealing from people. And by us, we see that a person can lose his bearings so much to his internal world that he thinks that he's really has this beautiful non-Jewish wife and beautiful non-Jewish kids. He can lose himself. Okay, that's. But in essence, but ultimately he's going to go out free. Okay, that's one thing. The next thing, the Torah is very interesting over here. That it tells us the story of the giving of the Torah, but it seems to be missing a step or two. What's the step it missed? Let's say there's the way the Torah tells the way the Torah relays the story is rather surprising. At the end of Parshat Mishpatim, the Torah goes back and tells us about the giving of the Torah and how it was given and they made a covenant. And Rashi says famously from the Gemara that when this all happened, the end of Mishpatim, it was on the 4th of Nisan, 4th of Sivan, excuse me. It was before Matan Torah, which means that in Yisrael we're told about the giving of the Torah. We hear about the 10 Commandments. We hear about the Parshat Mishpatim. And then afterwards, all of a sudden we're told about the going back to the story, and it's the 4th of Sivan, before the 10 Commandments, before Mishpatim. So that's how Rashi learns it. So Ramban argues and says, doesn't make sense, doesn't fit. The Kedushas Levi, the great Kedushas Levi, the great Levi Yitzchak of Radisha, has a beautiful explanation. He says that really that he prefers Rashi's explanation. The Orach Chaim goes like Rashi's explanation, that this, in fact, we're going back to explain. But he has a beautiful thing, and I just have to tell you, Rabbi, that one of the things about the Kedushas Levi of Levi Yitzchak is that the love of Klal Yisrael drips off of every page. It's just staggering. And he has some words. I actually want to quote these words. He says from the Pasuk, it says in Perik Chav Daled Pasuk Gimel, it says, "V'yavo Moshe v'yisaper la'am es kol direi Hashem." And he went back and he told the people all of the words of Hashem. So Rashi says, what did he tell them? So he told them they should first of all separate, and then he told them all the mishpatim. Rashi says the 7 mitzvahs and Shabbos and Kibbutz Avim and Para Aduma and the laws that were given already by Mara. There was a place already in the story before in the Shalach. So the Kedushas Levi says that the word Vayisapir is not really the best word to tell that, to say that. If the Torah wanted to go to tell us that Moshe Rabbeinu is kind of going back and telling us what happened then, and now he's going to be retelling them in order to tell them the mitzvahs they have to keep, it shouldn't say Vayisapir. Yisapir is like telling a story. Yisapir is not the right word. You should say Yitzapir, he commanded. Right? He commanded. So what is this Vayisapir? I have to read the words because they're so sweet. It says, Haya Misaper La'am. So the Misaper, what he's telling them is not the mitzvahs. He already told them about the mitzvahs. That already happened before. What is he telling them now? And again, he would have been commanding if he wanted to retell it as a command. So what is he telling them? Again, this is not the simple shot in Rashi, for sure. Rashi said he told them, and he used the word for Yisapi. You have to ask a question on Rashi why it says Yisapi. Says the Kedushas Levi, Hayim Misaper La'am Goldel HaPu'ula Shepoli Yisrael B'Kiyam Hashem Mitzvahs of a mitzvah Shenitztav B'Mara. He wanted to tell the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to give over to the people the impact, the incredible impact when they keep the 7 mitzvahs. Even when they keep the 7 mitzvahs, which really mostly for B'nai Noah, but even when we keep the 7 mitzvahs and the other mitzvahs they were commanded in Mara, the Heichsha Kodesh Baruch Hu Mishtashea B'Kiyam mitzvahs, and how Hashem delights in the keeping of the mitzvahs. Shekol Olamas v'Neshamas Tloyim Behen, because the entire world and all of the souls are dependent on the Jewish people doing these mitzvahs. So and he says, and once we heard this, so I just have to read the words because they're so sweet. As Kavan Sheshamu Yisrael Godel Ashashum Mishtashea Kodesh Baruch Hu B'Kiyam HaMitzvahs VaShefa VaSosim. He says, once we heard as a people how much Hashem delights in this, and the Sosim and the Simcha, the joy that He has, that we affect all of the worlds in a positive way. So we said, whatever Hashem says, we're going to do. So there's an idea in Hasidic Sfarim, not emphasizes the beauty of that. We give Nachas Ruach, we have Hashem just a love of. So he told them a story. He told them something that was not essential to the mitzvahs per se. He told them how much Nachas Hashem has. The best word that I can think of, I'm sure he knows the word, is tkvel. Tkvel is to be like, you're looking at the grandkid and you can't hold yourself back. You're smiling and crying and you're just like bursting with nachas. We should all be zocheh to such brachas. And that kveling is what Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people, right? So that's important for us just to know that the giant of, Rav Levi Yitzchak Berditchev tells us, like, when we do our mitzvahs, sometimes they may feel flat, sometimes we think, what does Hashem, does he benefit, so to speak? And to know that Hashem has his mishtashea, mamish delight in the mitzvahs that we do. That's the Yisaper. He also mentions a fascinating idea. It says in the pasuk, actually in the beginning of this section, at the end of Parshas Mishpatim, it says that he spoke to Moshe and he told him, "Come up to Hashem, you and Aaron and another and of you." Excuse me, and the 70 elders, and it says the hishtachavisen, and they bowed down meirachok, from far. So the simple reason was they didn't want to come close, right? Because this was like coming close to Hashem and going up to the mountain and all that are represented. So it says they bowed from a distance. So he says a fascinating idea. What does it mean in terms of being close or far from Hashem? Well, it's much more that they were far, but Hashem's everywhere. What does it mean to be far? So the concept of nearness and the concept of distance have a significance to them. And they're not the simple shot of a physical distance. He says there's two ways that we relate in this world to our connection to Hashem. One way we relate to our connection to Hashem is that he's beyond everything. He's beyond any concept that we have of him. He's beyond any attempt to grasp. How does one even think of trying to grasp an infinite, all-loving, like just an existence that was and is and will always be? We can't wrap our head around such a thing, and we feel I'm this like little nothing of a nothing, right? That's rachok. Rachok means not that I'm distant physically, but I'm distant in terms of my relationship and knowing that there's something so much bigger beyond anything I can imagine. Karov, when a person's close to Hashem, in these contexts, what it means is, I know Hashem fills the world. He's listening to the Shiur. He wants to hear us learning Torah. He's around the world. He's taking care of all of the plants and all of the animals, and he's taking care of all the people. And he's intimately involved, and he's karov, he's close to us. And both of them are totally true. And as Jews, and probably everybody has this concept, but we want to hold both of them. We want to hold karov and rachok, that Hashem is close and he's distant, that he is near to us in the sense that we feel his presence, or at least we're aware of his presence. And then rachok means he's way past anything that we can imagine. And he says that concept of karov and rachok is the essence of love and fear. Fear means that I realize he's so past any conception that I have. And karov means, and even so, I want to be close with him. So yira is kind of a do not, don't go near the electric fence, or whatever you want to use for your own mashal. But it means something, it's just beyond whatever we can imagine. So that's rachok. He feels he's just way past anything I can imagine. And then karov means he's with us, and that's ahava. So it's an interesting idea that sometimes we'll read the words in the Torah and we'll see. But what happened over here was that he was mishtachabisem. Actually told you should bow down from a distance, means you should have this Yiras Shamayim. That's what he was telling him. Rachok, you should bow down from a distance and know that distance is essential to as a preliminary to connecting to Hashem. And then hopefully after we have rachok, which is the yira, then we can have the ava. Let me do one more thing, but I'm going to have to do it a little more shorter because I don't want to take them. I don't want to go past our time. I learned with a very, very nice fellow, Moshe Katz, very sweet fellow. And we learned a piece from the Mori Naim. I really should know who the Mori Naim is, but I'm telling you, this it's like literally it lights up the eyes. I'm telling you, we learned this yesterday. I felt like, wow, what was this like? So he says, I'll just tell you this word very in short. In the beginning of Parshas Mishpatim, it says the pasuk tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to give the Jewish people the Torah in an interesting way. The Elam Mishpatim Meshet, the laws you should put in front of them. Tosi means put in front of them, like a Shulchan Aruch. Place it in front of them. The uncle says something which is a little bit hard to understand in terms of just the simple pshat of the words. The Ilay Dinaya, these are the judgments, the laws. Asher di tasdar kademehom, that you should be misader, that you should lay out in front of them. Now, misader means putting things in order. Exactly the word to shavi would be more to place, to put. To tasdar means to order them in front of them. So very much in short, he says that in this world, Hashem gave us potential, and the way he learned, he said in like Kabbalistic terms, is that there is like the letters, which are the building blocks of this world, are given over to man. In the sense that there's like raw material, raw information, which is given over to us. And based on what we do with it, will determine if it's brachos or klavos. Because the Gemara says klavos don't come from Hashem. So he says, whatever shefa, whatever like divine energy was put into this world, was really put into our hands. It wasn't just left theoretical, and Hashem's going to bring it was literally put into our hands. And if we're in connection, we're connected to Hashem's higher will, they're brachos. Things will be in order, things will flow, things will make sense. And if not, we can rework the entire program and lose the entire focus, and it can turn into klavos. And he says something which is rather remarkable. It says in Pirkei Avos that why did Hashem make the world with 10 sayings? So he said 10 sayings in order because the tzaddikim who will fulfill his word will be building the world, and the Rishoyim who don't keep his word will be destroying the world. So yes, how did Hashem give over? What does it mean to give over the world to the Rishoyim? So he said, didn't give over the world to the Rishoyim. He gave over the world to all of us. He said but we have a choice of putting things in order or having things upside down, based on what we do, our connection to Hashem, our connection to Torah, our connection to mitzvahs, our connection to our neshamas, right? Now, if a person goes off the path, it's a balagan. He made things upside down. But even so, he can go back and fix it up. Even though the letters and all of the ideas that are represented by the letters and all the components of that, of what's represented by that like that jumble of divine energy, a person can realize, wow, look what I did over here. That's Yisurim. A person can come to Yisurim, and Yisurim can be bad in the sense that he has to go through a lot of hardship, but he can realize, wow, I'm going through something and I need to fix something up. I need to switch something into a positive way. Right? So when he's going to be taking that divine energy and he's going to be saying, I lost that divine, I lost my point of reference. So I was bringing Chas V'Shalom Klola into the world because I took all this divine energy, all the divine letters, and I put them on there, I put them everything upside down. Now he puts it back together. That's the responsibility and the calling that we each have. So he says that the pasuk says, these are the things you should put in front of them. So on one level, it means you put in front of them, right? Just give it to them. But the uncle says, Tasder, you should put it in order. It means even if you'll fall away from the Torah, even if things will go upside down, even if things will not be straight, you can put it in order. You can put it back straight, right? You can get things in order if you want to, and that's what you need to do. So we'll learn it, we'll fall away. Things that the letters and the energy is in order, falls away, gets mixed up. And Taster, the uncle, is telling us again on a much more deeper level, and Chassidiship level, that's us. Our obligation to take that which is out of whack and out of order and put it in order. All right. So the kids, we had the Shem Yishmuel talking to us about an Eved Ivri who's a slave who lost his internal compass and how he gets back in touch with that. He thinks he has a wife, she's not his wife, etc. We had the Kedushas Levi telling us two different things. One is that there's this, well, he was saying, actually, let me do it in the order that we did it, that Moshe told the Jewish people how dear all of the mitzvahs are to Hashem, how much joy he gets from them when we do the mitzvahs. He also told, and then the other piece from the Kedushas Levi was the fact that there's sometimes a relationship of rachok and sometimes karov. Sometimes we're feeling just his awesomeness. That's yira. Sometimes we feel his closest. That's ava. And this last idea, again, that the idea of, in terms of the morainayim, of having things in order and putting the world in order, and that job was given over to us. Okay, Rabbi Howie, thanks so much.
Sure. Thanks so much.
Hey.
Have a good
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbos.
You too.